Hello, you're watching Proactive. Joining me is Dr. Srinivas Rao, co-CEO and co-founder of Atai Life Sciences. Srinivas, very good to speak with you this morning. And you're out with some exciting clinical trial results today. Could you tell us about the VLS-01 program and what today's phase 1b results mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks for having me on. Yeah, we're very excited about these results. So we started with this program, a couple of years ago, with the idea of having a product that was very easy to use for and well accepted by doctors and patients, and something that could fit into this 2R paradigm that J&J has established with Spravato, for example. So that's something that was very important to us. What we did, we've been tweaking the formulation over the past couple of years. We did a phase 1. We reported some results in the fall of last year, learned a lot from it, updated the formulation. Now just tested that new formulation in the current phase 1 trial that we're reporting results on. And what we found is that it was very well tolerated. With the formulation actually exceeded expectation in terms of pharmacokinetics. And in terms of the amount of drug that was actually put into the body, it did better than we anticipated. It was actually comparable to intravenous. The intravenous, you can put it in, it's 100% goes into the blood. This was, pretty comparable in terms of, the maximum amount of drug that was put into the body. So very excited about that. Really good tolerability. In fact, it could be best in class tolerability. So many psychedelics are associated with some degree of nausea and vomiting. At the dose that we're going to move forward with, which is 120 milligrams, we had one instance of nausea out of 14 exposures, so about 7%. We had no vomiting. We had low incidence of headaches. We had no local issues. So sometimes, whether it's intranasal or oral, sometimes you have some kind of irritation locally. Had none of that at 120 milligrams. So really excited about that. Taking that intermediate dose of 120 milligrams forward, putting that into a phase 2 trial, a robust phase 2 trial in treatment-resistant depression. We've had discussions with regulatory authorities about this design. Everybody's very comfortable with it. So very excited to get that trial moving soon, and we anticipate results from that trial sort of year-end next year.
Maybe to address the elephant in the room, Srinivas, the FDA made a decision on Friday not to allow MDMA. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to really note that there were a number of idiosyncratic elements to Lykos's program. This is a program, again, the folks at MAPS, Rick Doblin in particular, deserve lots of kudos for all their work over the decades to advance this program. But it's very much almost generational. This IND, the investigational new drug application went in 21, I believe. So it's been a very long journey for them. The trials were small, and the way Lykos positioned it was MDMA-assisted therapy. Therapy is not under the purview of the FDA, right? So it was even the posing of the product was a little bit strange. The trials, as I said, were very tiny. A total of about 180 people in the 2 phase 3s. That's distinct, from Compass's phase 2 trial, which is 233 subjects. Their phase 3 program is over 800. That's a more traditional kind of package. They did some other things that were different because of this whole focus on therapy. They, obviously had patients start on therapy, but that therapy was not standard, right? So there is a standard approach to running trials where you do a standard of care and you add a drug or a placebo on top of it. This was kind of a de novo therapy. And moreover, it was not standardized. There was a lot of latitude that the therapists had in terms of how they treated the patients. In addition, the therapists were there during the administration of the drug. So they had a pretty good sense of which patients got drug and which patients did not. And so that could have, the concern was that led to the therapist treating the patients differently. That's called functional unblinding. The functional unblinding of patients is pretty common with drugs. Functional unblinding of other people that are providing therapy to the patients, that's unusual. So that was another element. They did not reject the program outright. Everybody has said that it looked like the product had promise. What they said is you got to go do a phase 3 trial. another phase 3 trial. And that's why I view this as pretty positive in some ways, at least for the rest of the folks in the space, because everybody else is doing the trial has already been taking to heart all these learnings, right? So there is no therapy for most of the trials, ourselves included. There's psychological support, but that's a little bit different. We're assessing all the adverse events. They were a little loosey-goosey on that. That we're doing all the labs that one would normally take. Trial sizes are large. We're assessing durability. We're assessing dose response. So all these means of addressing functional blinding have been taken into consideration by ourselves, by Compass, by Beckley, as well as other companies.
Other developments that investors should be looking out for this year, Srinivas?
Yeah, a couple of things. So we also had our earnings release, in terms of financials, have guided that we have $103 million of cash and cash equivalents at this point. And we're reiterating our guidance for a runway through 26. The other thing that we mentioned in that press release is our second program, which actually ties in very nicely to the discussion we just had around Lykos. So Lykos is developing MDMA. MDMA is a racemate. It's actually two separate molecules. Those molecules that are related to each other like your hand, so they're mirror images that don't superimpose. And lots of drugs are racemates, and you can imagine that they impact receptors differently, right? So a receptor is kind of like a glove. You're putting your right hand in your left glove doesn't work all that well. So it's the same kind of thing. The two enantiomers are referred to as R-MDMA and S-MDMA. S-MDMA is very amphetamine-like, but we didn't want that around. We wanted to focus on the R, which was thought to have most of the entactogenic effects. That's the effects that are thought to be therapeutic with MDMA. When we conducted the phase 1 trial, and we did report results on that as well, we found it was a really interesting drug, very different than what we anticipated. It actually had features that were psychedelic-like, so very different than MDMA. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about that. I mean, what were the implications? And there were some other interesting things around self-compassion, et cetera. So we spent some time thinking about it and actually announced today that we're moving forward into a phase 2 trial in social anxiety disorder. So that trial will also be kicking off towards the end of this year, and we anticipate a readout towards the end of next year. So again, really excited about that as well.
Srinivas, I hope you'll keep us posted on any progress with that. Thank you very much for the update today.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
That's Dr. Srinivas Rao, the co-CEO and co-founder of Atai Life Sciences.